Hey everybody, and welcome to Q&A Wednesday, where we answer the questions that you have about, I get so excited I want to talk really fast, about your health and fitness goals. I'm going to just adjust my light here really quick, just because it's being kind of awkward. Great topic tonight, and the reason why I want to talk about this, sorry, should have had this figured out beforehand. There we go, we'll get it. Okay, so the reason I want to talk about this is I've had a lot of clients. One of the questions I do ask when we go through goal assessments is, how many hours of sleep on average are you getting? And do you feel rested when you wake up in the morning? And a lot of people, of course, sometimes the older we get, the more that's on our plate, we tend to really struggle with sleep. I've had that issue in the past. As a matter of fact, for about 5 or 6 years, I was averaging about 5.5 hours of sleep, which is definitely not enough. And I've kind of figured out why, and we fixed that. And so, of course, I'm doing very, very well. As a matter of fact, when I get up in the morning, some mornings I'm like, I could just go back to sleep. And I spent a lot of years not feeling like that. So we're going to talk today about why sleep should be your best friend forever, because it's so important, and it really does play a huge role in your health and wellness. So we're going to talk about that. So first thing we're going to do, hey, Kathy, thanks. I don't even work my traps. These are because they've held me up for my entire life. So let's talk a little bit about why sleep is so important. I think people don't give sleep enough credit to their health and wellness because they don't understand what happens. I think over time we kind of start to see what happens when we don't get enough sleep chronically. We start to see some things break down, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But it's really, really important. It plays a bigger role in our health and wellness than exercise. I always tell my clients when they're telling me they're not getting enough sleep, I'm like, girl, sleep trumps exercise. Like, if you're not getting enough sleep, there's so many things that happen when you're sleeping that there's literally it's kind of like lifting really heavy and trying to build great big muscles, but you're not eating the right nutrients. You're not going to bake the cake. It's not going to happen. You're not giving your body the nutrients, the things that it needs to do those things. So again, sleep is a huge part of it. I go through this list of things when I ask people, how is this working for you? How is this working for you? Because everybody's formulas are a little bit different. And of course, there's a lot of variables involved, and I really kind of have to get to the root of why maybe they're not seeing the results they think they should be seeing. A lot of times it's a combination, but I do find that sleep comes up a lot. So let's talk about why things are important. Now, there's a lot to this, and we could talk about sleep cycles and all kinds of other things, but I don't want to get super technical. I want to really just talk about the big benefits of why sleep is important. So the first one is, and all of you probably already know this, memory consolidation. When you go to sleep at night, your brain cannot remember everything that happened during the day because that's just too much information. And sometimes I tell my kids, because they're like, Mom, how come you can't remember stuff? And I'm like, because I have 46 years worth of input in this head. I said, don't knock me until you reach my age, and then we'll have this conversation. But really, it's about the things that your body decides it needs to keep, and it has to put things in different storage units. It's kind of like pulling open your file drawer, putting something in, shutting it, and making sure that there's some in the short-term memory system, there's some in the long-term memory system. You really have to go through and see what's important, and your brain does that for you automatically when you sleep, right? You don't really have conscious decision over that. Your brain or your body is an amazing, amazing thing. It's resilient. It does crazy, interesting things. It keeps you alive. Like, that is its goal. Your body has 2 goals that you don't even know about consciously. Number 1, to avoid pain, right? So that's why sometimes when we lift, we compensate because it's kind of painful, hurts so good, right? And it tries to keep you alive. So there are things that it does in order to make you the most efficient it possibly can. So if you allow your body what it needs in order to do those things, you're going to remain optimal for your life. And I think that's super important. So I don't know about you, but there are just days I just don't remember things, and you kind of have to go, did I sleep very well last night? So that's important. Number 2, housekeeping. There's a bunch of housekeeping that goes in. If you kind of think of like when you are leaving work at night and all the janitorial staff come in and clean the place because nobody's there, so it's easy. Your body does the same thing. There's different toxins and things that accumulate throughout the day, and might be byproducts of processes within your system, and your body has to clean those out. So the problem is if you're not getting enough sleep, those toxins have really deleterious functions in your system. They break down. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about chronic loss of sleep and what those do. But just know that that's a huge one. If you think about people that have jobs where they work at night, doctors, nurses, policemen, firefighters, Unfortunately, those groups are the ones that see a higher incidence of disease, cardiovascular disease, all those things, because again, they're not getting the sleep that they need. And we're going to talk a little bit about the circadian rhythm in a second. If you know what that is, that's your 24-hour cycle of sleep and awake. So we'll talk about that in a second. But housekeeping is a huge part of what your body has to do. So if you don't get enough sleep, your body can't take care of that. And again, if those toxins stay within your system, that causes disease. All right, number 3. Tissue repair and muscle growth. I just sometimes giggle because people are like, well, what does sleep have to do with my muscle? You don't build muscle when you lift, honey. That's when you break and tear down the muscle, right? You're trying to create micro tears in the fiber so your body will build a new layer of muscle. It does that at night. You build muscle at night while you sleep. Predominantly rest and recovery, right? So whenever you're resting and recovering, that's when your body tends to do it. But there's a huge part of that happens at night, along with a good portion of fat burn happens at night when you sleep. So if you don't get enough sleep, those things cannot happen. Also, sleeping helps you to regulate your hormones. Yes, there's a huge amount that has to do with your nutrition and making sure you're getting the right nutrients in order to do that. But sleep plays an immense role. I mean, think about it. If you don't get enough sleep, don't you feel more stressed? And don't you tend to crave more garbage because you want quick energy? So you're like, I just need, a candy bar to keep me going. And all those things throw all your hormones off, right? So it's all interrelated to a certain degree, but sleep does play an incredibly huge role there. Because again, when you rest, there's a lot of things that have to happen, and your body can functionally do those things in a faster, more progressive way. All right. It benefits your mental health. When you see people who, and again, this kind of comes back to the circadian rhythm. If you see people that really have kind of gotten their nights and days mixed up, maybe they stay up all night watching movies and then they sleep all day and they kind of get this really weird depression cycle, Again, it's really hard for your body to be optimal when you're not sleeping at the right time. So there is research that shows that the more hours you sleep before midnight, you get much, much better sleep than you do after midnight. So even if you're going to bed at midnight, 1 a.m. and you're sleeping till 8 or 9 the next day, you're still not getting the same benefits of the people who fall asleep at 9 or 10 at night and getting that sleep, because your body goes through a certain amount of cycles of sleep, right? You have REM sleep, you have non-REM sleep, and then you have cycles within theirs. So again, there's things that have to happen, and if you're not allowing your body that time, then that becomes a problem. So there's just major, major benefits. Again, it shows that when people get enough sleep, it helps promote weight loss. There's just so much to it. So let's talk about the downside of not getting enough sleep. Research shows a ton of things that happen, especially with chronic lack of sleep. And I get it. Like for a lot of us, whether it's we just can't get to sleep. For some of us, we wake up and we can't go back to sleep. We're going to talk about how to circumvent that. And some people may need some professional help. Don't be afraid to get that when necessary. I think sometimes we think that that's a sign of weakness. I'd rather get help and solve that than to just continue to break down and not have. I want to be optimal, right? I want to feel good. I want to bounce off the walls for the rest of my life. So problems that can come from chronic lack of sleep can be things like high blood pressure, right? And again, I'm not saying that these are independent of something else. It could be a combination of stress, lack of eating well, not getting exercise. Those things also play a role, but these exacerbate the issues. Cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, depression, obesity. It also, I'm sure we've all had this problem when we haven't gotten enough sleep. It impairs problem solving, as well as your reflexes, right? We've all heard of those, like the train derailed because somebody was falling asleep or whatever. A lot of times people that have jobs that depend on staying up for long periods of time, when they lose those reflexes because of impairment of sleep, it can be catastrophic. Can't even say the word. Catastrophic situation. So again, those are super important. It also has an incredibly downside to our immune system, right? So I always know when I'm starting to overdo myself, because I can feel myself kind of start to get low, and I can feel my immune system starting to sag a little bit and wane a little bit. It's really, it kind of tells me. I've learned to listen to my body, and it'll be like, you're working too hard. So case in point, this last week, I have been watching Grandbaby because it's super fun, and because my son and his wife bought a new house. And so I've been painting till all hours of the night, and staying up really, really late, and then being crazy work during the day, and then going and grabbing my grandbaby for a couple of hours to help out. And I could tell that I needed to just slow down just a little bit because my body was wearing down. and I needed more sleep before midnight. So that was a big one. All right, so let's talk, just really quickly, I want to talk about circadian rhythm. You know, our bodies have this natural rhythmic situation that from our ancestors, right? From the beginning of time of human beings, that our bodies want to be awake during the day and asleep at night when it's dark. And it has a lot to do with certain, like the light and how it hits our eyes and releases cortisol and things that keep us awake during the day. And then as it starts to get dark, we start to release melatonin. It is really easy when you're staying up all night watching TV and emitting blue light, that all this, your brain still thinks you should be awake. And so then you struggle to go to sleep. So there's a lot of things that you need to do in order to fix that. We're going to talk about that in a second. But it's really hard to buck your circadian rhythm and think that you're going to be optimal. Again, back to people who work night jobs. That's a tough one because I know we have to have those people. They have to work those jobs. It's not an option to not have the people that work those jobs, but it really makes it difficult to be optimal when you work for especially years and years with that kind of a situation, right? That you're not following your circadian rhythm. So the circadian rhythm is your body's schedule. Your body likes a schedule. If you haven't noticed, if you tend to get hungry during the same time of day that you eat each time, because again, your body expects it. So your body likes that schedule. So waking up at the same time in the morning is great. Going to bed at the same time at night is great. Your body tends to like, I don't even use an alarm clock anymore because I pretty much wake up between 6 and 7 every day. Now, if I have to be up early for something and my alarm goes off and scares the crap out of me, that's a whole other ballgame. But Kathy wants to know best time to work out for results. That's kind of a hard one because, again, I'm not going to give you a specific hardcore answer from research. What I'm going to tell you is what I tell most people is whatever works best for you. Now, that being said, for most people, it usually is the beginning of the day. It gets their blood moving. I've had multiple bikini clients where, you know, they're not seeing results and we've swapped them to going to the gym before they go to work every day. They get better workouts. They're leaning out faster and they're more on track, on progress. So for the most part, though, it really depends on you, your schedule, your family, all the things that are incorporated in that. I highly recommend that you don't work out just before bed because then you might struggle to slow down and really relax and get to that point where you can go to sleep. So I've been at all times of the day. Honestly, I prefer to get my fasted cardio first thing in the morning, although that doesn't always happen the way that it's supposed to. But I like to do my lifting after I've had a couple of meals in the morning as well, so I have that energy. But again, it really just depends on the person and what works best for them. There is such thing as people who do best waking up early in the morning and they like to be a morning person, and there are some people who just are night owls and that's how they work best. And I think it's really difficult for people to go against that when they find that works better for them. So we talked about best sleep at night. Again, to be optimal, you want your body to work with your circadian rhythm. And so today, because we have lights, right? We have electric lights, so we can pretty much be awake around the clock if we really need to. And now we have a lot of blue light that affects our brains and keeps us awake at night. Electronics are one of those things that we need to get rid of as we're going to sleep, right? Or get some blue blocking glasses, which I don't own any, but I like to read before bed because I get real tired really fast. And I'm a nerd, so that's a great part. All right, so let's talk a little bit about having a sleep schedule. So for a lot of people, they struggle. You know, I catch a lot of people watching TV, playing on their iPad or their phone before bed. It's really a good idea to start putting that away 30 minutes before bed. If you have to do it, get some blue blocking glasses because again, there are settings on our phones and iPads where you can actually have it turned down so that the blue is less glare and it becomes more of a red hue. That's not a bad option as well. It does it automatically during a certain time at night. So not a bad idea. But having a good sleep schedule really can help you set the tone. So for me, I like to take a hot shower at night. It helps my body relax because everything gets a little tense during the day. It also cools down my core because my body has to actually work to kind of cool itself down. So as I'm climbing into bed, I feel comfortable and ready and relaxed. So that's a good one. So a hot shower or a bath. Again, I like to read. Definitely avoid the blue light. Avoid caffeine and alcohol. I know a lot of people think, well, you know, drinking alcohol makes me relax, but it actually fights your body to do some of the things that it needs to do as you go to sleep. Same thing with eating. You know, I used to carb cycle and I had a coach that had me eating a really, really big meal before bed one night a week, and I would carb coma. So I'd fall asleep because my body was like, it had to heat up to burn all this stuff off. And then I would wake up after, an hour or so, and then couldn't go back to sleep. So I really recommend avoiding crappy food before bed. And definitely if you can get your food in, 2-3 hours before bed, so your body can be done digesting that food, because your body cannot digest and do all those things that it needs to do at night when it's supposed to sleep. So if it's trying to digest, these things won't happen, right? And if it's trying to do both, neither one is going to be optimal. So try to get your food done, long enough so that you can digest that. I just would avoid eating really before bed or heavy food. Try to go to bed at the same time every night. Yeah, you might stay up a little later on a weekend if you don't have to work. But even then, my body, if I stay up too late, my body the next day is like, I don't like you, right? And I'd rather feel good the next day and be able to do the things that I need to do. Even if I'm having fun on vacation, whatever, I tend to do the same schedule, right? Definitely exercise. Those that exercise, your body is ready to sleep at night because you're a little more tired. You're doing some physical work. I'm sure that all of us during the pandemic and the quarantine really struggled with time, because all of a sudden we were home all the time. There wasn't a time we were coming home from work and a time that we would get our workout done and a time that we go to bed. All of a sudden we were here every day, all day, and we couldn't figure out what day it was. So that probably, I'm guessing that threw a lot of people off on their sleep schedule, but it's important to get back to that timing so that you can definitely get a certain amount of rest. That's really, really important. And for those of you that really wake up and have a lot of thoughts and then can't go back to sleep, highly recommend that you get some sort of a notebook or a journal, write those things down. I always do my list for the next day before I go to bed, so I know that I don't have to think about it, because it takes me kind of all evening. Like, I've already started mine for tomorrow, and then by the time I go to bed, I don't have to think about what's going on. And if I'm struggling with something, drama in my family or something that's going on, I might grab my journal and write about it, or sit and meditate for a few minutes. But it really needs to be, we need to find out how to figure out how to separate that so that we can get a good night's rest. So a couple of really great ideas. There's a couple of really good books that I recommend you read if you really struggle with sleep. Number one is called The Sleep Revolution by Arianna Huffington. I read that years ago, and she talks about her struggle through getting enough rest and recovery as a woman and a mother. Great book. There's also one that I have not read yet, but I read his other book called Eat Smarter. Sean Stevenson, he's got one called Sleep Smarter, and that's the next one that I'm going to pick up because he's really smart and we speak the same language. So great books to read. Not a bad idea to, go listen. If you're not a fan of reading, you got Audible, guys. It's not that difficult. It's great to learn. So the last tip that I want to make, one of the things that the biggest difference for me is getting your hormones right? Which, number one, is going to include eating some of the right things, because your body cannot produce the right hormones if you don't eat the right food, right? People can't figure out, why am I low testosterone? Why is my estrogen off? Why do I not feel like myself? Because you're eating garbage, right? Garbage doesn't make hormones, right? Your sex hormones are made from cholesterol. So if you're eating just all kinds of crap that doesn't have the right things in it, you're not going to produce the right hormones. But if you're getting older and your hormones are not quite right, and for a woman, it's not just do we produce them, but do they play well together, right? Because they cycle throughout the month. We have to make sure that they're doing the right thing and they're playing well against each other. And if those aren't correct, then sometimes it really makes it difficult to sleep. So can some medication. So keep that in mind, that there are some other things. I noticed that they mentioned some mental health issues that can prevent people from sleeping, but realize a lot of the mental health issues come from lack of nutrients. So again, it's hard to say that it's one thing or the other. They all have something to do. They all play in the same part there. So you have to address all of those things. But if your hormones are completely off, I noticed that once I got on bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, whether that's because my genetics have said that plays a role in it, whether it was from competing really hard for almost a decade in bodybuilding, probably had something to do with it. But once I got on those, I believe the progesterone really made a huge difference. All of a sudden I could sleep through the night. So I actually have nights where I sleep completely through the night and don't even get up at all. So that's phenomenal, because that didn't happen for a lot of years. So really, really important, because it plays such a huge role in your health and wellness. And I don't know about you, I want to feel great for as long as I'm going to be on this earth. That is a really big goal for me. So if sleep is not your BFF right now, you need to take the steps to do that. Nothing else is going to matter. The exercise, you're not going to get the most benefits from your exercise. Nutrition and sleep rival a little bit. You really got to have both. because those play such a huge role, but sleep really is where it's at. And I think that you need to address that and get that down so that you can be the very best person that you can be. So hopefully you are happy and healthy. That's what I want for you all. Have an incredible week. And you, by the way, you guys, I get my best ideas from you. So if you have a question, something that you want to talk about, want to hear about, please let me know, because that's how we do it. So have an incredible night, you guys. And until next week, that is Q&A Wednesday. Have a good one.